everybody, this is John Wood, and I want to run through real quick for you how to tie this pattern right here called the Cent Caddis. It derives its name from its simplicity and a comment that I received on stream one time from a fellow who said I wouldn't give you 2 cents for a fly like that. Anyway, it's turned out to be a very good fish catcher. It's the body of the fly is marabou barbs. The ribbing is our olive 6/0 thread, and the collar is black awesome possum. I believe this is Wapsie, and I'm tying these on a Umpqua Competition Series U625BL barbless hook. It's got a black nickel finish, and it's an extremely durable, strong hook for its diameter. The 3 colors I like to tie this in are chartreuse, yellow olive, which is just kind of a dull, kind of dirty looking olive, and Kelly green. The one I'm going to do for you today is the chartreuse, but first I want to talk about how I select the barbs on the marabou for the fly. Now first you want to look at a feather, and I need to find one that's got very long, slender barbs with fine tips on them, like those you see right behind the fly right there. I hope they're in focus enough that you can see them. And they come from the middle portion of a blood quill. If you look towards the butt end, the tips on these are not quite as fine. You see they've got longer, that fuzz right there is the barbules, and those barbules are longer towards the butt than they are towards the tip. If you look at the very tip of the feather, you'll see that those are really fine all the way to where they intersect with the stem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come about 1/3 of the way up the stem, and I'm just going to separate those barbs and clip the stem. Now I'm not going to throw that away, I'm going to save it because it's very useful for other flies. Then I'm going to take these barbs, the long slender ones, and I'm going to pull off about 8 to 12 depending on the size, and I tie this in the size 14 down to a 18. You can tie it in a 20 also, but I don't find that necessary in most cases. Anyway, I'm going to take about 8 to 10 of those barbs, got a few extra popped off with it, pull those from the stem, and then I'm just going to take, and I've moistened my fingertips, and I spin that to gather those butts. Then I'm going to moisten my fingertips on my other hand and spin those together just to kind of control those barbs so they're not just flying around. That's one thing about using marabou, is it just kind of flies around. So I'm going to put my hook in the vise here, and again this is a U625BL-BN. It's a Umpqua Series competition hook. We're going to start our thread, and this is a olive uni in 6/0, and I'm going to measure out about a 4-inch tag on this thread, and I'm going to start the thread here, and we're going to keep that thread tag attached. We are not going to break or cut it off, and I'm going to wind a thread base all the way back to what's going to be the back end of our fly. And now I'm going to just take this bobbin and spin it counterclockwise a little bit to help it flatten out. And the reason I want to do that is because I want to have really good control of it whenever I attach these barbs. So I'm taking my clump of barbs here, look at them, and you see the tips are not completely even. So I'm going to even those up by cutting them, and cut the tip of the shortest one so that they're all the same length. Now I'm going to shove these tips in the intersection between the hook shank and the thread on my side of the hook. When I bring the thread over, it catches that in. And now, without putting a whole lot of pressure, but keeping the thread slightly snug, I'm going to pull that down until I've got about 1/16 of an inch of those barbs forward of the thread. Now I'm just going to use that to lock those barbs in place and then work my thread, laying another layer of solid thread all the way up behind the bead. Now you can see here my thread is a little bit longer than my barbs. I'm going to cut that thread to where it's just about 1/4 of an inch longer. That's because when I spin this up into a little rope, that long tag will get in the way. Now I'm just spinning this in my thumb and fingertip until I get the thread and the marabou to kind of look like the stripes on a barber pole, and it's pretty snug. Once I get that all snugged up, I'm going to use my short rotary hackle pliers to wind that on there. Now I find it easier to turn this upside down, or actually I do it at a 45, but you won't be able to see that if I do that. So I'm going to do it upside down, and I'm just going to spin that tapered marabou rope, wind it around the hook. In touching wraps, I want the core of that marabou rope to touch the previous wrap. As I wrap that on there, and you can see the taper that builds. And when we get towards the front, you can see those barbules are going to act as our legs on the finished fly. And I want to get right up behind that bead. And I'm going to bring my thread over the material and lock it in place. I go in front and behind and in front and behind. Then I'm going to trim the excess marabou off. Now I'm just going to go ahead and stand that up, and you can see how those long barbules are going to act as legs on the bottom of the fly. And I don't want that on top, so I'm just going to trim everything off. We're not trimming into the core, we're just trimming the longer barbules, and you can go across the top and then just slightly down the sides a little bit. Dampen that. Now to get the color on the back of the fly, I'm going to use this olive Copic marker. I'm going to use the pointed end and just take it and run it across the top of the fly. And when I first put that on there, it looks really dark, but it's going to fade with time. Like by the time we're done tying this fly, that's going to be faded to the color that I want. And some of that green actually seeps down the side of the fly. So what you want to keep in mind when you're tying these is the slower you go, the more ink is going to leach into the marabou, so you're going to get more green down the sides. If you don't want that green, just go really fast. Just swipe it across there real fast, and that'll even make the back of the fly lighter. Now, I'm going to use this black dubbing for the collar, which is going to act as the more legs and the wings as they pop open when we're fishing this like it's an emerger pupa. But I don't want that heavy 6/0 olive thread showing through whenever I finish the fly with the whip finish. Plus, I want it to be black. So I'm going to switch to, and I'm using a 12/0 black Vivus thread. It's super fine, super strong, and I don't have to worry about the collar. It's real easy to switch it. I just hold the tag in, make 2 wraps here, and then spin that around the olive bobbin. I don't know if you could see that. I dropped it and it made 2 wraps around that olive thread, and then when I come back and make 2 more wraps with the black thread, that olive is locked in and my Vivus thread is locked in. I'm going to pull my olive bobbin back and hold the tag end of the black Vivus, clip them both, and that is out of the way. Now for this, I like to rotate my vise a little bit. With the Renzetti vise, trying to put dubbing on your thread on a very small fly, you're kind of fighting it. So I like to spin that sideways. I know that probably puts that a little bit out of focus, but I'm going to get right back to it. Now I'm just going to put small dabs of this awesome possum, and I just took the bag and cut a corner out of it. And it makes its own little dispenser. And this may look like quite a bit of bulk, but it's not. It's a very small amount of dubbing. I'm just not winding it up tight. And the reason is I want it to be really bushy when I wrap it around the fly. And I'm going to make my wraps right behind the bead, between the bead and those marabou barbules. And you can see I made a nice fuzzy collar there, and then I'm gonna, once I get all my dubbing applied, I'm gonna make one more wrap right through the middle to kind of secure the dubbing in there a little bit more, stroke it back, and then go to right behind the bead. And because this dubbing is going to help my whip finish lock in a little better, I only need 4 rounds, and I've never had one of these come undone. Clip it really close, and then if you want, you can use something light and tease that out a little bit. But I don't find that I need to. As you fish it, that dubbing is going to kind of fuzz a little bit. It's going to look like legs trailing off, wings, the antenna. There's 2 ways to fish this. One is as a larva. You just put it either free nymphing by letting it drag along the bottom, and I usually like to use this as an upper fly and then have a lighter fly below it. Because of the tungsten bead, it gets down there real fast. Despite the bulk of it, it still sinks really fast. So fish it under an indicator, free nymphing it, and just let it drift like a larva that's caught in the current. Or if you want to fish it as an emerger, throw it out, let it drop, and then swing it in the current as you come into the area that you think the fish might be feeding on those emergers, and I guarantee you they will crush it. I like fishing this with a soft tackle that way. That gives you 2 opportunities to catch those trout that are focusing on the emergers. Anyway, there you have it, the 2 Cent Caddis. I hope you like it, and until next time, peace, love, and fly fishing.